Welcome back to the Abundant Practice Podcast. I'm here with Linzy Bonham. She's been on this podcast a lot of times because y'all love Linzy Bonham. She's at moneynutsandbolts.com. And I know that it is an uncertain time. And I thought, who better to talk to than the queen of making your money work for you, Lindsay. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about creating stability
Mhm.
in these uncertain times. It's really messy economically, it's really messy politically. Um, and I think that those two things end up weaving in and out of each other, of course. And I think that, well, not I think, I know that so many of the therapists who follow me, these listeners, are pretty worried about money.
Yes.
So, can you talk us through how to get our heads out of the sand if that's where they
Yes.
are, or to
Yes.
stop checking our bank accounts every 14 seconds if that's what we're doing, and
Yes. Yes.
find some stability internally and
Totally.
practically?
Yes. And I love that you named that as two examples because I think that those are two illustrations of what happens when we're dysregulated around money,
Hmm.
right? So it's like head in the sand. We're like avoiding. We're in hypoarousal, maybe. We're just like, "Mm, don't look at it. Can't look at it. Like it's not there." That's one way that we respond when we are in a very stressful relationship with money,
Hmm.
when our nervous system is overwhelmed. The other way, as you mentioned, is like hyper fixated, looking at it all the time, hyper vigilant. Did my bank account change? What's happening to my bank account? What's happening to my bank account? That's a relationship that I have with email sometimes when I'm stressed. And that's when we need to stop and be
Hmm.
like, wait a second, how am I feeling?
Uh-huh.
Um, and so that's always where I suggest folks start when we are encountering some bumpiness with money, or if money is hard, is stopping and zooming out and noticing like what is happening for you, like what's actually going on, because we all have our own specific nervous system, we all have our own stories and experiences with money, our own narratives that pop up, parts of us, so many ways that we can name all of the
Hmm.
things that come up around money. And unless you actually start to name what's happening for you, it's very hard to shift into any kind of productive problem solving state because you're
Yeah.
probably in some version of a trauma response,
Hmm.
right? So the first thing to start to notice is like, what are my thoughts about money right now? Like, what do I believe about what's happening? Do I believe that I'm not making any money because, my dad was right and I'm never going to make this work and I never should have done this? Like, do I believe that I'm powerless here and everything's happening to me and there's nothing I can do? And am I going into more of like that hopeless kind of state? Stop first and be curious about what you are working with, right? Like,
Hmm.
what are the circuits that are firing in your brain? Because until we stop and zoom out on that, it's really hard to move into any kind of state where we can actually solve what's going on for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the whole being still and checking in on your feelings, one of those things that therapists preach all day long, and we tend to not be, most of
What?
us, great at.
What? Yes. Yes. You know
Yeah.
what to do. Do what you would tell your clients, right? And
Hmm.
so, I do tend to talk about money mostly in terms of stories, which of course is like a more narrative approach.
Hmm.
But one of the interesting things about money stories is we can be running multiple contradictory stories in our brain at the same time, right?
Hmm.
So one part of you feels like you're not good enough, but then the other part feels like you should be doing better than this, right? And so it's like we can have this lots of noise. And so mostly I find it's very helpful to just like write it out, right? Just
Hmm.
like, and simple prompts like, what are my beliefs about why money is hard right now? Why things are
Hmm.
financially tight right now? See what happens. It's amazing how often what we start to write surprises us. We're like,
Right.
oh, that's not what I thought was running through my
Hmm.
head. Right. But stopping and slowing down and being with that, being curious about like, where did this come from? When money was tight at home when I was a kid, what happened? Like
Hmm.
I thought about that myself as, before coming on this call and I was thinking about this conversation, I was like, when I was a kid, what happened when money was tight? And my parents fought. That's what I remember.
Hmm.
My parents almost never fought, but the like one fight that I remember distinctly was about money, right? So it's
Hmm.
like, what am I expecting to happen then when money gets tight? Like, what is my nervous system bracing for? So
Right.
all of that to say is first, stop, be curious, give yourself some prompts, like, what do I believe is happening now? How do I think I could possibly help this? Like, what are my beliefs? Can I help this? to start to identify like what is the bag that you're carrying into this situation. And then sometimes just by writing those things out and identifying like, oh, this is my not good enough coming up. Oh, hello, old friend. I know you.
Oh
That
yeah.
in itself can start to diffuse some of the intensity around it. And other
Mhm.
times it's like, oh, well, that's a great thing to bring to my therapist. There's an interesting little thing. Like, so, just like with any kind of work that we do on ourselves, some of it just by naming it helps to soften it. And some of it will be stuff that we're actually like, oh, this is hitting some really deep stuff for me. This is hitting stuff around like my childhood abuse or like growing up in poverty and instability. And I'm now going to take this to professionals, who I
Mhm.
trust with these deeper, more vulnerable things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think about how owning your own business brings up all your stuff anyway.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
And then
Yes.
when maybe you've been through that hurdle, you've had a steady flow of clients. I know a lot of people that I've talked to are having to go back to marketing. They had kind of finished marketing a while ago because it had created a consistent machine. But as things have shifted in the therapy space with big therapy tech and the economy and all these things, people are like, oh, I'm getting way fewer calls than I used to. I'm still doing okay, but now I'm scared. So
Yes.
it's like all those buttons get pushed again.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big shift that we're seeing in general, I think, in our industry, if you want to call it
Hmm.
that. Is yeah, like for a little while there, we didn't really have to market very much at all.
Hmm.
Right? Like it's like once you had your reputation in town, people knew, oh, this is the person that you sent to for complex trauma. This is the person who's amazing at eating disorders. And we didn't have to do a lot of that work. And it's true. We are now, many of us, including those of us in the online space, like a different kind of space, but we're having to now
Hmm.
think differently about how to have folks know that we exist again. Right.
Absolutely.
And so this is kind of like part of that um, getting down to actually solving the problem and noticing what the problem actually is. Right.
Hmm.
So once you've started to identify, okay, this is the stuff that's coming up. Oh, okay. Okay. Like it's, hello, darkness, my old friend, you
Hmm.
know, I can solve this. Then it's starting to actually zoom out and look at what is the actual problem, right?
Hmm.
Is it that referrals are down? If referrals are down, where are your referrals coming from? Like then you can start to problem solve. What are my lowest hanging fruit
Hmm.
marketing avenues? This one doctor has sent me so many folks over the years. I'm going to reconnect with them and remind them that I
Hmm.
exist. I'm going to send them a fruit basket. I'm going to go out for lunch with them. Like sometimes, but it's only once we start to identify what the problem actually is and we're thinking about it
Yes.
with our beautiful, full brains, which everybody listening to this podcast has in abundance, that we can start to actually think about solving what the actual problem is.
Hmm. Yes. And so let's talk some about the like practical money stuff. Like we've got the
Hmm.
story piece that
Yes.
we're
Yes.
hopefully like creating some new stories around money. Like
Hmm.
once we've identified, oh, this is this old stuff.
Hmm.
Um, what is it that people can do to be to do money differently
Yes.
at a
Yes.
time when it might not be flowing the way it once was?
No. My word around money, like I have all my words that I love, right? I have like confident, competent, clear. But the word, if I had to pick one word of what I know therapists need and benefit from around money, it is clarity,
Hmm.
right? It's really understanding what are your actual numbers, right? And
Hmm.
there's always two sets of numbers. There's always the money coming in and there's always the money going out,
Hmm.
right? So when we see that money is not working, part of what we need to understand is what is actually happening with the numbers. Are my clients way down? Right? Is less money coming in the door? What
Hmm.
is that jump? Like has my caseload dropped so much that I'm making $3,000 less a month than I was 6 months ago? That would explain a lot,
Hmm.
right? Then there's maybe an area to focus on there. But the other area to be curious about is where's money going, right?
Hmm.
Stopping and taking inventory of like, what am I spending on right now? Are there things that I've been spending on that maybe don't actually make sense because maybe I'm in a little bit less of a flowy, abundant time, right?
Hmm.
And I really caution folks about not going into scarcity, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing that we can do is like we can have again these kind of like extreme relationships with money. So sometimes when money's good, we're just like whatever, and there's no clarity at all in what's happening. It's just like I heard that Ariana Grande song the other day where it's like the see it, I like it, I want it, I got it.
Hmm.
Right. And so it's like sometimes we can get into that mode when money's very abundant and we don't really
Hmm.
have to have a lot of like clarity or guardrails because there's so much money flowing in that you can kind of make a bunch of like meh decisions and still there's enough.
Yeah.
When money gets tighter, we do have to be more mindful and present and intentional about where it is going, right? So this is the other piece is stopping and looking at where's your money actually going? Like, are you paying for subscriptions that you're not using? Are you part of a supervision group that you're not actually really getting much out of anymore, but you kind of like keep going because you kind of feel obligated? Like, what are the emotions around that that might
Hmm.
be having you pay for something that really is not the greatest use of your money right now, right? Because
Right.
when we have less money to work with, that resource is more scarce, and the money we have is that much more important and valuable to make sure it's going to what actually matters to us.
Hmm.
Right. So, like, I know in my own household, I'm aware of the things that are it's really nice to have, but it
Hmm.
costs quite a bit. Mostly, frankly, it's help from other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, you know,
That was my first thought.
yeah, it's like,
House cleaner.
it's cleaning, it's help with my laundry, it's like childcare from an incredible babysitter rather than like the 10-year-old down the road. Right. It's like these things that do really matter to me. And when I have the money, 100%, I'm going to spend money on those things for multiple
Hmm.
reasons. It's values aligned. There's so much about it. But it's also a lever that if money gets tighter, I'm aware that those are things that I could stop paying for and immediately I would recoup hundreds of dollars. And
Hmm.
most of us have things like that in our
Yes.
life. Right. But you need to know what those levers are. Like I often think about money as like two levers. There's like the make more lever, there's the spend
Hmm.
less lever. And you need to know like what is available to you so you can make great choices because you might look at your budget when you sit down to get clarity with it, and that's a very practical thing to do, your work budget and your home budget. Let's just say at work, you sit down and look and realize, like, oh, I'm paying for these subscriptions I don't really use. I'm like in this community that I've gotten a lot out of, but like I don't actually, I'm not really using it right now. I could always take a break and come back in 6 months. You might identify just in doing that several $100s of savings per month
Hmm.
that then is money that can now come home to you. Right. And
Right.
same thing at home. It's like, but we need to actually stop and be with and be clear about our numbers before we can make any strategic decisions.
Yes. Yeah. And so that takes some like deep breaths and
Yes, it does.
really looking. Like
Yes.
I'm a fan, and it's probably because I'm like Gen X, but I'm a fan of like printing out bank statements and
Of
like,
course you are.
you know, like really going through, like
Yes.
highlighting things,
No.
circling things,
Yes.
getting
Yes.
clear.
100%. And
Yeah.
that's a great strategy for starting to identify what these things are. And I actually have a workshop that's part of Tiffany McLean's Lean and Make Bank
Hmm.
that walks folks through this literal exercise. So
Yeah.
print your bank statement, print your business bank statement from last month and your business credit card. You're going to need
Hmm.
both. And go through and just look at everything one line at a time, right?
Hmm.
And this is where too we don't have to be super thinky. We can make it a somatic exercise to be curious about like, okay, when you look at this line, do you feel expansion? Do you lean in? Are you like, oh yeah, that was a really great lunch with that colleague, and then we ended up having this great idea together. Now we're doing this workshop. That was like a great use of $50. Or do you
Hmm.
feel like, ugh, yeah, yeah, that's not really worth it. Or like, ugh, I am overpaying for rent and I probably could sublet because I'm not using the office enough. But like, even just getting out of the thinky into the somatic
Hmm.
cues. And then you can just mark next to those things, like what is like, yes, feels good, check mark. And what is like, eh. And like, you can put a little X or question mark next to things. And right there in like literally 10 minutes, you can get some really good information about what is clearly a great use of your money and where's an area that you can start to be curious about whether
Hmm.
it could be cut, right? Or, there's budgeting skills. We can always reduce things, cut things. We can delay purchases of like, do you actually need that thing right now? Do you need to do that training this spring? Could you do it in the fall instead?
Hmm.
But it's only once we start to identify how the money's flowing that then we can start to figure out what to do about it.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because when you do that, I did that once, and there was this program I had paid for but hadn't used.
Yeah.
And so I had like this negative response to it.
Hmm.
And but it was like my own kind of shame of having
Yeah.
spent money on
Yeah.
something and continuing to spend money on something that I wasn't using. And it
100%.
propelled me to actually use the program, which then made me
Yes.
more money. And I was like, okay. So
That's
like,
the thing.
yeah, I had
Yeah.
like a somatic
Yeah.
reaction to it
Yes.
that led me to question, like, well, I mean, I liked that person. That's why I bought it. And, I imagine
Yeah.
that there are some people in the abundance party who might not be using the stuff that could listen to this and be like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
oh yeah, I should probably use that and then make more money.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but it's interesting how sometimes our own stuff will come up because I was like mad at the charge,
Yeah.
but I'm the one who signed up for it and it's something I wanted.
Yes.
I just
Yes.
hadn't taken the time.
Yes.
So I was
Yes.
ultimately mad at myself.
The only person to blame was yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, which is true because again, that's great emotional cue. And the
Hmm.
solution wasn't like, oh, I should fight to get my money back because da da da. The solution was like, oh, right, I should do that thing because I did identify that it was useful and it
Right.
still is useful. And I'm hearing that's a great example of what could have been a cost, kind of a
Hmm.
waste of money. Instead,
Hmm.
you actually turned it into the investment that it was always able to be by
Yeah.
actually showing up and using it. And this is
Yeah.
what I find. This is the area actually for folks listening. This is the area that, having worked with hundreds of therapists over the years, looking at their finances with them, professional development is the area where we can waste the most money, but also
Hmm.
benefit the most.
Right.
Right. And so that's an area where it's like you can easily spend hundreds of dollars a month on a course that you never open. And then you're like,
Hmm.
oh, I failed. Like bad feelings do. But it's also the area where if you pay money and actually follow through with the action and actually show up, get the support that's being offered to you, learn the lessons, do the things, that is where that money can actually turn into more money in your business. Which, like,
Hmm.
this is a phrase that Julie Harris has in her Infinite Wisdom, is whenever you go to spend money in your business, you should think, does spending this money, will it make me more money?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's really
Yeah.
what investments in our business, that's what expenses are supposed to be, is they're supposed to enable us to make more money, right? To like
Yeah.
deliver our services in a better way,
Hmm.
smarter way, whatever, in an office that's nice so folks actually want to come back, whatever that
Hmm.
is, so that you can get paid for what you do and you can pay for your life and you're serving folks in a way that is really beneficial for everybody.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. And I think that there are a lot of shiny objects out there,
Oh gosh,
both
infinite.
like clinically and businessy. Like it's full, like the world is full of shiny objects, and that's a marketer's job is to make their shiny object the
Right.
most alluring,
The
right?
shiniest of the pile.
Yes. Um,
Yes.
and I think it's fair to say there is no magic bullet clinically
No,
or in business. There
no.
is no magic bullet. There's no one thing you're missing that you just need to pay $99 for this month that's going to make the entire difference.
Hmm.
That just like both in business and in clinical work, it's an interwoven kind of tapestry. I can't believe I'm saying that. I'm like
I bet
eye
you
rolling at
are.
myself, but it's like a tapestry of different things that you
Yes.
do that work.
Yes, it is. It is. And the most important part is actually doing those things.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Again, no
Therapists love
purchase
to learn.
solves
Um,
everything. Yes, yes.
uh-huh.
No, they absolutely do. And then I think the other piece, that's coming to mind for me as we think more about the political landscape right now
Hmm.
and how incredibly overwhelming it can be. And like I was texting with a friend the other day, and I almost like my social worker brain was almost starting to come online to be like, "Are you okay?" Because she was like, "I
Hmm.
cannot stop doom scrolling." Like
Hmm.
I'm just doom scrolling constantly. And I was, saying to her, I'm lucky enough to be able to work with Americans. So I feel like I'm able to support folks directly. I'm Canadian, by the way,
Hmm.
in terms of that context. But I was saying to her, like, what can you actually do? Right. And money is really powerful, right?
Yes.
Like money is where we take basically value that we've created by like, with our beautiful gifts and talents that we're all sharing with the world, we turn it into this thing that can be exchanged for literally anything else.
Hmm.
Almost within reason. And so that's also something I remember feeling this way during like the George Floyd protests. It was
Hmm.
just like so overwhelming and like the injustice, like it's just so huge, is money is also really powerful, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like, how can you also take this money that you're earning and do something that feels really powerful with it, right? Supporting
Yeah.
causes that you care about, contributing to people's GoFundMe if they're, legit GoFundMes.
Hmm.
But yeah, this is the other thing too, is I think so often as therapists, we're used to thinking about our way of contributing to the world being through emotional care. And we're like, I'll
Hmm.
just emotionally care for everybody, always, forever.
Right.
But there is actually a limit of that energy.
Hmm.
But we are in this field that incredibly, wonderfully, people want to pay us like at least $100 to
Hmm.
be with our wisdom for an hour, if not $200 or $300, depending on
Hmm.
your business model. You can turn that money into something amazing for all of these organizations that are like fighting to keep the world the way that we want it to be. Right.
Yes.
So that's another piece too, is like
Hmm.
money is really powerful. And I think sometimes as therapists, we shy away from that power. We're like, ugh, it's powerful and power is bad. And I don't want to be part of that. And like, but really, you are powerful. And if you don't
Yeah,
own that, it's like if you don't own your privilege, you're wasting it. And money is part of that. Right. So
absolutely.
also, yeah, thinking about like, is there something your money could do this month that would feel so good to see it
Mhm.
do? Right.
Yes.
Because what to you is also maybe like some money to some organizations or causes or people, it's a lot of money and it makes a big
Right.
difference.
Especially when combined with other people who are making the same choice.
That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yes.
think about like when we look at our list of here are all the things that are nice to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me,
Mm-hmm.
a cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
If I put the same money that I've been putting towards the cleaner towards the ACLU or
Yeah.
towards
Yes.
mutual aid
Yes.
or, any of the many, many places it's desperately needed,
Yes.
it's probably going to do more for me. I can
Yeah.
listen to an audiobook and clean my house,
Yeah.
like
It's true.
I've
Yep.
got kids, they've
Yes.
got chores. I could up those chores. My husband can pitch in. Like we can all pitch in to do
Yes.
something and thus be able to use our money in a powerful way.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's, that's a great example of just intentionality,
Yeah.
right? That might be the choice that you make. It might not be
Mhm.
for folks listening. That might
Yeah.
not be something that makes sense for
You
their
might
life at
need to
all.
have somebody clean your
A
house so
hundred
that you
percent.
can like be
Yes.
great at work.
Yes.
Um,
Precisely. Yes.
yeah.
But it's like remembering that every dollar we spend is a choice. We're
Hmm.
making all these choices. And sometimes that can feel overwhelming. But also when we own the power of that, then it's like, yeah, you know what? Theoretically, okay, let's just say if I think about what I pay for help, and I'm going to keep paying for help, by the way. Just,
Hmm.
sometimes my cleaner listens to my podcast. I'm going to keep paying you. You're amazing. But it's like,
Yeah.
if I think about the power of those dollars, I could literally be contributing like a few $100 a month
Hmm.
to causes. And I do contribute to causes
Yeah.
already. But like there is that discretionary income. And so that's an area of huge power that I have that I
Yes.
can choose to be using really intentionally.
Absolutely. And that's one thing, like we have a family meeting every week,
Yeah.
and the kids get to decide who we're giving money to that week. And it's a
Mm,
great way to just kind of instill in them, like, it doesn't have to be a lot of money.
yeah.
Once they're making their own money, like even if it's
Yeah.
$5 from their $150 paycheck, like
Yeah.
that matters and that's
I love
helping.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what have you noticed about your kids' reaction to those family meetings and that like who are we giving money conversation? What are you seeing?
Yeah. They really love we give a lot to St. Jude's. We
Yeah.
circle back to St. Jude's, which treats kids with cancer,
Yeah.
supports the families. Animals, they're our sexual assault center in town.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we depending on what's going on politically, sometimes we will present a case for a thing.
Yeah.
If we present a case, usually they'll jump on. So yeah, they're open and also geared towards other children and animals, as you might expect for children. So
Yes. Yes. How
yeah,
old are your kiddos now?
they're 12 and 9.
Okay. Yeah. They're a little older than mine. My son, I've also been instilling him like making intentional choices, surprise, surprise, budgeting. So he has a
Hmm.
piggy bank where we divide things into four
Oh
different
yeah.
compartments.
Hmm.
And so, there's save, spend, donate, invest. I'm
Hmm.
going to tell you, my son is 6 and he is not yet on board with giving money to other people. So, also just to, temper it for, depending on the child and their developmental stage,
Uh-huh.
can take a while for kids to wrap
Yeah.
their heads around that because he's like, but I want Lego. I'm like, you do. You really want Lego. That's true
Yeah.
at all times. But I think
Uh-huh.
just, modeling to our children that this is important and we do this,
Hmm.
it means that it's in the air, right? And even if they
Yeah.
don't like pick it up enthusiastically when they're little, they'll remember as they
Hmm.
get older, like, right, yeah, we should always think about where our money can help others.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that everybody sets some time aside in their calendar, because if it doesn't get scheduled, it probably doesn't get done, just to be with feelings around money. Think
Mm-hmm.
about the stories that are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Sit down and look at your money. Maybe print out your bank statements, um, and see. see what the story your bank statement's telling too. I
Yeah.
always find that
Yes.
interesting with
Oh,
folks.
yes, certainly. Yes.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
these are the first steps, and
Hmm.
it all gets better from there.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Allison.